Hello sim racers and welcome back to the Fixed Setup Oval Racing Guide. In today's episode, I'll be going over week 12 of season 2, the final week of the season. I'll start by saying that yes, there is a hot fix scheduled to go into service on Tuesday, June 1st at 9 a.m. Eastern. This is the 7th patch of season 2, and what's going to be patched, as always, is not known ahead of time. My assumption is that the new downtown Chicago street course that's going to be used in this week's Pro Invitational event is going to be added into the service, but beyond that, it's anybody's guess. Hopefully, no significant changes to the content being covered in this episode. Last week was the full-length NiS Coke 600, and I ran the Thursday night event. Had a pretty good race going, ran around the top 5, top 10 for much of it, but ultimately suffered pretty significant damage within the final 100 laps and ended up finishing 18th, one lap down. If you took on the full-length NiS race in Charlotte, how did you fare? Did anybody out there do more than one of these? You're kind of a legend if you did. Did anybody win one of them? Let me know down in the comments below how your Coke 600 experience went. Now, this week, we've got ARCA at Legacy Phoenix, C Fixed at Iowa, B Fixed at Mid-Ohio, and A Fixed and NiS at Sonoma Raceway. It's always kind of tough to end a season with a couple of road courses because they're not always the most popular choices. But I'm happy to report that I actually kind of like ARCA and C Fixed this week. So if you're not into turning left and right, the oval offerings seem to be pretty good. So without further ado, let's get into this week's guide. It's a home race for me in ARCA this week as the series heads out west and visits the jewel of the desert, Phoenix International Raceway. PIR is a 1-mile oval, and this legacy layout mimics how the track looked in 2008. Unlike the current day track, this version doesn't have that wide open paved dogleg, but rather a grassy patch that you definitely won't be driving through to shortcut the track. This version of PIR features 11 degrees of banking in turns 1 and 2, 9 degrees of banking in 3 and 4, and the dogleg has 3 degrees of banking itself. This track will always be special to me because, again, it's my home track and the first track that I ever went to for a NASCAR race. While it looks vastly different today and has been severely upgraded in a good way, this version of the track is how I first came to know it, and it is an absolute blast to drive. This race is 40 laps in length and runs at 2:45 p.m. in sim. For this hot lap, I used a 14:1 steering ratio and 64% brake bias. My lap time was a 28.528. Looking at the lap from the exterior, our braking point for turn 1 is actually going to be off of pit wall to the left-hand side where it turns blue. That's about the point you want to start getting to the brakes and setting up the entry into turn 1. Don't take the car all the way to the yellow line. Keep it about a car width away from there. And when you get to the end of pit wall, that's when you can start getting back to the throttle as you ease out towards the exit of turn 2. You can clip that yellow curbing for the dogleg. Don't get too aggressive with it. And then look for this white cage up on the catch fence as your braking point for turn 3. Again, try to keep the car about a car width away from the yellow line. And then look for an orange Home Depot sign on the right is when you can start playing with that throttle as you try to get out of turn 4. The car is going to fight you here. Get the throttle down and complete the lap. For the race, I recommend jumping up to a 16:1 steering ratio to help you with that right front tire wear. The car's handling characteristics are neutral enough that you won't need the quick steering from a smaller ratio. After 20 laps, I experienced about a half a second of fall off. You can see there's a really big jump around 10 laps in as the tires started to give up and front grip faded away. But I was able to run a pretty consistent pace in the sixes for the second half of that run. My tire wear suggests that I was driving into the corners too hard, wearing the right front faster than needed and leading to that sharp decline in lap times around lap 10. Backing up corner entry will help with this, as well as dropping the brake bias as the run goes on. With the car being neutral to a bit snug in the center of the turns, these tire wear readings don't surprise me, but they can be easily managed with a bit of care during the race. Where you start and how you work traffic always greatly impacts your tire wear, but it's magnified even more at a track like Phoenix. NiS Fixed heads out to America's heartland and pays a visit to Iowa Speedway, a 7/8 mile, D-shaped short track designed by Rusty Wallace, and that design was heavily influenced by one of his favorite racetracks, Richmond Raceway. This track features progressive banking in the turns ranging from 12 to 14 degrees, and the front stretch is banked at 10 degrees. This track used to host races for IndyCar as well as NASCAR's Xfinity and Truck Series, but now all three are not on the schedule for 2021. A shame, considering this track has put on some incredibly memorable races in the past. The NiS Fixed race goes for 63 laps and takes place under the lights at 8:40 p.m. For this hot lap, I used a 14:1 steering ratio and 62% brake bias. My lap time was a 23.607. Coming to start your flying lap, use the top side of 3 and 4. There's a lot of grip up there, gives you a good speed boost down the front stretch. Look for this bend in the top seam as your braking point for turn 1. Once you get to this bend, that's when you want to start getting to the brakes and pointing the truck down the track into turn 1. There's a white box as you come off pit road. That's going to be what you're looking for as your throttle up point. And if you get it right, you should be able to stay in the gas all the way out to the exit of turn 2. Rear grip can be an issue here, so be ready to modulate the throttle if the back end steps out. Your braking point for turn 3 is going to be the caution light coming out of the catch fence. Once you get to this point, again, start getting to the brakes and pulling the truck towards the dashed line, not all the way to the bottom as you go into turn 3. Keep an eye on the outside wall for the tire marks. That's where you can start getting back to the throttle. It's not a lot of off-throttle time here at Iowa. Back to the throttle, let the banking carry you up towards the wall, and then bend it back towards the bottom, down the front straightaway to save a little bit of time. For my 20-lap run, I bumped the steering ratio up to 16:1 because the setup, while fairly neutral, does demonstrate a noticeable bit of understeer in the center of the turns. After 20 laps, my pace fell off around 9/10 of a second, but the truck remained fairly predictable in terms of handling. It actually drove pretty nice. Looking at my tire wear, the right front tire wore slightly faster than the right rear, and that indicates to me that running a higher steering ratio is perfectly acceptable. Like ARCA at Phoenix, backing up the corner entry will reduce the tire temperature for the right front and prolong its lifespan, but dropping that brake bias as the run goes on will help as well. Being smooth with the throttle while exiting the turns will keep the right rear tire happy, and with so many lanes to use at this track, moving around a bit to find more speed can definitely be to your advantage. You would be surprised how big of a factor dirty air can be at a short track, but there's no escaping it, even at Iowa. Your right front tire will take more abuse if you sit in the wake of another truck, so use this track's progressive banking to get out from behind someone else and take care of your stuff. Be Fixed rounds out Season 2 at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in Lexington, Ohio. This tight, twisting, and technical track is a far cry from the wide-open Circuit of the Americas that we took on a few weeks ago. This track is 2.258 miles in length, features 13 turns, and has played host to a wide variety of racing series, including IndyCar, IMSA, and the SCCA. And because of your support each and every week on these videos, I can afford to bring in a high-quality road course ringer to give us a guided hot lap. Let's welcome back to the F-Sorg, Nate Stewart. Go check him out on his Twitch channel, linked down in the pinned comment below. Thanks, Nate. For his hot lap, Nate used a 10-to-1 steering ratio, 57% brake bias, and his lap time was a 1 minute 28.913. Remember, these races go off of road I rating and safety rating, so you'll likely be put into splits with people you're unfamiliar with. This is a great opportunity to watch drivers who tend to do more road course racing, and you may be able to learn a thing or two from them. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'll stick to my time-tested advice when it comes to doing road course races in stock cars. Focus on keeping your car on the track, and you'll automatically give yourself a huge advantage over everybody else. Until you understand the braking zones, there's really no point in trying to set flying laps. Learn the track and how to drive within the limits, then you can start chasing lap times. Whoever makes the fewest mistakes will have the best chance at success. NiS Fixed finishes off Season 2 at a track that I love dearly, Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California. Surrounded by vineyards, this picturesque racetrack is lush and green in the spring, but unfortunately it welcomes NASCAR in during the dry summer months, so it's not as aesthetically pleasing as it could be. Sonoma Raceway packs 12 turns into a 2.52 mile layout that is full of breathtaking elevation changes, high-speed and low-speed corners, and that famous hairpin at turn 11. Completing a lap at this track is a true test of driving technique in these powerful stock cars. NiS Fixed goes for 17 laps at 3:20 p.m. in sim, and NiS goes for 45 laps at 1:30 p.m. in sim. Both of these events feature local cautions only, no full course yellows here. Once again, we'll bring in Nate Stewart to show us around Sonoma Raceway. He used a 10-to-1 steering ratio and 57% brake bias. His lap time, 1 minute 39.715. Like Be Fixed, focus on keeping your car on the track and avoiding mistakes that send you off-roading or into a tire barrier. How you control your throttle pedal will separate you from the competition. Treat it right, and you'll be keeping the rear tires hooked up and moving you in the right direction. Treat it wrong, and you're going to be melting those rear tires and spinning out constantly. Remember, braking and turning are a big no-no in road course racing. Get your braking done in a straight line before the turn, get off the brakes, and then use your steering wheel. You'll be amazed how much time you can gain just from that technique alone. And that'll do it for this episode of the Fixed Setup Oval Racing Guide. A big thank you to the members who go above and beyond to support the channel. It really means a lot. If you're new around here, hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss anything in Season 3 and beyond. If you're an OG of the channel, thank you for being a part of this community. I stream Iracing on my Twitch channel throughout the week. Come on over and say hello. I'd love to see you over there. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way to do so is by following me on Twitter, linked down in the description below. Thanks again to Nate Stewart for his help with the road courses this season, and have a great week of racing.